So you want to learn guitar music theory, but you don't exactly know the right place to start? Well, don't worry guys, in this video we are going to be talking about 4 of the crucial things you are going to need to know if you want to learn guitar music theory. Let's get stuck into it. Hi there everybody, my name is Matt Dawson. I'm the director here at Inspire Music School, where we are passionate about beginners learning and loving the guitar. If this is the first time we've met, please make sure you're going down and clicking that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're not missing out on any future content. Now let me just start off this video by just expelling a myth. As guitar players, we don't necessarily always need to know guitar music theory. There are plenty of examples out there of accomplished musicians that can play the guitar and master their songs, and they don't have a single clue about music theory. But what we have to consider is, will it actually help? And of course the answer is going to be yes. So with that in mind, we have to think about what's the best thing to learn first. And in this video we are going to be talking about 4 huge things that you need to understand if you want to learn guitar music theory. Now guitar music theory, believe it or not, applies to all genres. Where there's a guitar, there will be theory there. Could be a rock song, could be a pop song, could be a heavy metal song, could be the most extreme death metal song you've ever heard in your life. There will be music theory in there somewhere. And the problem that a lot of people face is they don't know where to start, and they pick bits of music theory from all over the place and try and stick it all together. And it just doesn't work like that. Music theory is a lot like a house. In order for us to be really successful with it, we need to have a very strong foundation. If the foundation of your house is not solid, there's no point in even continuing with the rest of the building. And the same thing goes for music theory. We need to make sure we understand the basics first, and I mean the real basics. This is why a lot of people really struggle with music theory. They don't understand the very basic fundamentals. If you've ever tried to learn music theory and you've really struggled, please hit that like button and let me know what you were struggling with in the comments section, because believe it or not, hundreds of people, thousands of people, millions of people, including myself, all around the world have all faced the same struggles, and we've all thought, is this even worth it? So without further ado, let's go over to the whiteboard and let's look at the first thing I'd recommend understanding before we go any further with music theory. Okay, so the first thing I want to make sure I'm understanding is the distance between what we would call a tone and a semitone. So tones, as in the sound, and a semitone. Now all we're referring to with this is the distances between 2 notes. They can either be a tone apart or a semitone apart. The best way we can relate to it is if you think of it like a full step forward or half a step forward. So if I'm at point A and I wanted to go right the way across to point B, we would say we've taken a whole step from one to the next. But let's say, for example, if I only wanted to take half a step and end up in between. I've taken half a step and I end up here. Now if we think of it like we could have a note A and a note B. If I wanted to go a whole tone, I'd go straight from note A into note B. If I only go a semitone forward, I've not quite reached note B yet. So we're starting to bring this back into musical context now. So this is point number 1, understanding the distance between tones and semitones. You might want to get a piece of paper out and go back and make sure you're making notes on this, because all of these points that I'm giving you, they're all going to tie in together, and it's going to really make sense when we get to the end of the video. So make sure you're watching to the end. Okay, so now we've checked out what tones and semitones are, we need to talk about point number 2. Point number 2 is going to be the musical alphabet in its most basic form. The musical alphabet in its most basic form goes A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G. That's the musical alphabet in its most basic format. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it goes round and round like that. If you imagine the white keys on a piano, these would be all of your white keys as you go along. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now point number 3 is going to be the notes that actually exist in between some of these notes. Now this would be, if we were looking at a piano again, this would be the black keys on your piano. Now what we need to do now is talk about the notes that exist in between A and B and so on, because there are these notes that exist in between that we need to start tackling. So between an A and a B, you've got what's called an A sharp, or it's also known as B flat. This here, this kind of hash looking symbol, this is the sharp symbol. So between A and B, there is a note that is called A sharp or B flat. Depending on whether or not we're going forward, it will be an A sharp, and if we're going backwards, we would refer to it as a B flat. We won't get too bogged down into why this is now, but just take it as if we're going forward, this note, which is the same note, we refer to it as an A sharp, and if we're going backwards, we would refer to this as a B flat. Between B and C, there's nothing. Between C and D, there's what's called a C sharp or a D flat. Between D and E, you've got D sharp or E flat. Between E and F, there's nothing. Between G and F, you've got, you guessed it, F sharp or G flat. And between G and A, you've also got a G sharp or an A flat. Now you'll notice between B and C and between E and F, there's nothing. We won't get too bogged down into why that is, because it can get a bit sciencey, but the simplest way to kind of explain that is there isn't enough room on the sound spectrum for there to be a B sharp or a C flat. Okay, if we just take it as that, that'll keep it nice and simple for you. So just to recap, we've spoken about tones and semitones and the distances between point A and point B. We've spoken about the main notes in our musical alphabet, and we've also now identified what we would call the sharp and the flat notes. Okay, remember this is the symbol for sharp, this is the symbol for flat. So you've got A sharp or B flat, C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, F sharp or G flat, G sharp or A flat, and depending on which direction you're going in will determine whether or not you refer to it as A sharp or B flat or so on. So that's point number 3, learning your sharps and your flats. As an added bonus, what we can do is we can take that tone and semitone rule and we can apply it to this diagram that we've drawn out here. So what we can do is we can say the distances between A and B would be a tone, because we've gone straight from one note over another note and landed on our B. If we wanted to go a semitone from A, we would only go half the way, we'd land on A sharp. If we wanted to go from B to C, we're going only one note along, so that would still be a semitone. So what we've done is we've taken the tones and semitones rule and we've applied it to this diagram here, and this would work everywhere. And what you can do is you can start to look at different points and work out what the distances would be. If I started on D sharp and I wanted to go a semitone, I would go to an E. And if I wanted to go from E, a whole tone up from an E would land me straight over the F onto the F sharp. It's that simple. It's really, really simple. Once you look at it in a visual kind of format, you can start to see how simple this stuff really, really is. Okay, so we've just spoken about all the tones and the semitones and the musical alphabet, and you're probably thinking, how does this even relate to my guitar and my guitar playing? Well, don't panic. We're going to go into a close-up now, and we're going to check out how we can actually apply what we've looked at now to our guitar fretboard. Let's check it out. Okay, so for the next point, what we want to do is we want to take everything that we've learned in terms of tones and semitones. Now, if you remember where your sharps and flats are, if we go one space up, we're now in an F, because after E, we have F. If we were to go from E, imagine this is like the invisible fret, and we go a whole tone above, we've now got to jump over that F, and we're now at F sharp. If we go a semitone above F sharp, you've got a G. If you go a semitone above G, you've got a G sharp or an A flat. Now this is useful because you can do this on any string. Providing you know your musical alphabet with all the sharps and the flats, you can take that progression and you can start to apply it to every single string. If I take my A, I've got my A note. If I go one fret higher, I've gone one semitone higher, so I'm at A sharp now, or B flat. If I go one semitone higher from that, I've got a B. If I go a semitone higher, I'm at C. Semitone higher from that, C sharp. Semitone higher from that, D, and so on, right the way up. And you can do this on every single string. Now the benefit of being able to tell whether or not you've gone a semitone, which in this case is just going to be 1 fret, or a whole tone above, which would be 2 frets, is you're going to be able to identify your way around scales and solos and things like that a lot easier. Like many people out there, there's a lot of controversy as to whether or not we actually need to learn music theory. So if you're concerned about whether or not you actually need it, I'll put a link in the description below to a video that I did previously outlining that very topic. So just to recap, guys, the first point that you're definitely going to want to make sure that you understand is the distances of tones and semitones. We want to make sure that we understand what a tone is, what a semitone is, the point of going from point A to point B, kind of getting that mental image set in your head. The second thing that we want to make sure that we understand is the basic kind of circle of your musical alphabet. So literally just going from A to G. The third thing that you want to make sure that you understand clearly is the sharps and the flats and where they're placed in your fretboard. And the fourth thing that I recommend making sure that you truly understand is how it applies to your guitar fretboard. So literally just taking the starting opening note on your guitar string and working your way up. And remember, if you're going a whole tone, that's 2 frets. If you're going a semitone, that's just 1 fret. It's actually super easy on the guitar. Once you understand what a tone and a semitone is, you can start to apply those things really, really easily. Again, I stress, do you need this? Not necessarily, you don't need it, but if you do know it, it's very, very advantageous. And I always consider music to be a language. So if we can play the music, think of it like speaking the language, and we can hear the music like we can hear the language being spoken to us, it's always a good idea to understand the intricacies and all the verbs and the adjectives and how everything works together, because being able to say hello, how are you is one thing, but being able to actually construct a really good sentence and understanding how that sentence is put together is going to make you better at that language. Okay, enough about languages now. Again, if this has been useful for you, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you're not subscribed, please make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're not missing out on any videos. And if you found this video useful, please feel free to check out some of the other videos that are popping up around the screen. And until next time, guys, have a great one. Bye.